Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Phil Giraldi will be here with us in just a moment on why are the Israelis so upset when they hear the phrase Free Palestine. But first, this. While the markets are giving us whiplash, have you seen the price of gold? It's soaring. In the past 12 months, gold has risen to more than $3,000 an ounce. I'm so glad I bought my gold. It's not too late for you to buy yours. The same experts that predicted gold at $3,200 an ounce now predict gold at $4,500 or more in the next year. What's driving the price higher? Paper currencies. All around the world, they are falling in value. Big money is in panic as falling currencies shrink the value of their paper wealth. That's why big banks and billionaires are buying gold in record amounts. As long as paper money keeps falling, they'll keep buying, and gold will keep rising. So do what I did. Call my friends at Lear Capital. You'll have a great conversation, and they'll send you very helpful information. Learn how you can store gold in your IRA tax and penalty free or have it sent directly to your doorstep. There's zero pressure to buy and you have a 100% risk-free purchase guarantee. It's time to see if gold is right for you. Call 800-511-4620, 800-511-4620, or go to LearJudgeNap.com and tell them your friend the judge sent you. Bill Giraldi, a pleasure, my dear friend. You have a great piece out called Making Palestine Go Away, and we entitled this segment Free Palestine. We did so in small measure because of this. Chris, cut number 1.
Free Palestine. This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th. On that day, thousands of terrorists stormed into Israel from Gaza. They beheaded men, they raped women, they burned babies alive. Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want to destroy the Jewish state. I could never understand how this simple truth evades the leaders of France, Britain, Canada, and others. They're now proposing to establish a Palestinian state and reward these murderers with the ultimate prize. You won't be surprised to learn that Hamas thanked President Macron and Prime Ministers Starmer and Carney for demanding that Israel end its war in Gaza immediately. Now, these leaders may think that they're advancing peace. They're not. So don't give us this talk. It'll be a peaceful Palestinian state. It won't be.
Let's start with the beginning. Are you surprised that he's still preaching not only lies, but statements that have actually been disproven by Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and others about the so-called beheading, burning, and raping on October 7th?
Well, I'm not surprised because this has been a consistent account that appears in every propaganda organ. I read an article in the New York Times this morning updating what is going on there right now in terms of the Israelis with the so-called relief program that is now in effect. They managed to kill people last night and shoot others as part of the relief program. But anyway, this is standard for the Israelis, and the New York Times article had to go on to say, oh yes, this all started on October 7th, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, with the Hamas story, and the Hamas did this and the Hamas did that, all of which has been disproven by independent journalists, insofar as independent journalists were allowed into the area at that time. They're no longer allowed in, and by the Israelis, backed up by the U.S. So this is what's been going on. Tell a big lie, repeated over and over again. And this was something that Goebbels came up with, didn't he, under the Third Reich?
Right. I hadn't heard this mantra that Free Palestine is the moral equivalent of Heil Hitler. Is this something that the uber Zionists are preaching, or did Netanyahu just pull this out of a hat?
Well, it's another thing he's kind of invented, that the aggressors in what used to be Palestine are the Palestinians. And in fact, if you go all the way back to the creation of the State of Israel by the United Nations, there were two states envisioned, and it was Israel that used its militias to create what the Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, which is when they were driven from their homes, driven from their villages, and many of them that wound up in Gaza, in fact, were pushed from Palestine proper. And when Israel was created, Gaza was still part of Egypt. And so anyway, this is Israel has been the aggressor in all these events that took place to drive the Palestinians out. They've had a vastly superior military, meaning an army, navy, air force. Palestinians have had some relatively feeble militias in comparison, and have never had the ability to defend themselves. So Israel has been robbing them blind, including taking control of Jerusalem, which was supposed to be, by the UN decision, basically kind of a multinational, international city that would be used by all the faiths and by all the people that were living in the area. But Donald Trump and his ambassador decided to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and Tel Aviv is still its administrative capital, but Jerusalem is its nominal capital.
In the clip we just ran from Prime Minister Netanyahu, he attacks the leadership of France, Great Britain, and Canada. Have they lifted a finger to deter the genocide in Gaza?
No, this is the joke about all of this, and it includes the United States. Nobody ever actually does anything to punish Israel for what it's doing. They threaten to do it. And the reason why they are now, after all these months of killing, threatening to do it is because the publics in Britain, the United States, Germany, France, and Italy have all come out very strongly against the genocide that Israel is carrying out. So these are governments reacting to their own people by making it look like they're doing something, but what they're doing so far has not gone beyond just words and threats that clearly Netanyahu does not feel will ever be implemented.
Can anybody take seriously this equation of free Palestine with Heil Hitler? Hasn't 95, 98%, according to Jeff Sachs, of the countries in the United Nations voted to accept Palestine as a member country, as a sovereign state, and it keeps getting vetoed by the United States and the Security Council?
Yeah, that's precisely true. Something like 140 countries, I believe the number is, in the United Nations have accepted the reality of Palestine being an independent state with independent sovereignty, because this was what was envisioned when Israel was created. There was the vision was of two states side by side, which would basically be on friendly terms. And it was the Israelis that have basically gone the other way, have been stealing Palestinian land, driving Palestinians out of their homes, destroying their livelihoods. And there's been a reality. So it's interesting the way it's being twisted. And of course, the U.S. media, which is Zionist controlled pretty much, and the U.S. political class have been the worst enablers of all this. A U.S. president could have stopped this genocide currently if it was, of course, Joe Biden, But of course, Joe Biden was completely in the Israeli pocket. And I rather suspect Donald Trump is too. And we will find out more fairly soon about that.
In your recent piece, Making Palestine Go Away, you have some tantalizing comments that I must ask you about, one of which one of which states spying involving Mike Waltz. Now, Mike Waltz, just to refresh everyone's memory, is a military veteran, former Republican congressman from Florida, and was President Trump's national security advisor for about a month. And then Trump fired him. Vice President Vance claimed it was a promotion because Trump said he was going to make him ambassador to the UN. Trump has yet to submit his name to the Senate or to the FBI, as far as we know, for the clearance procedures for an ambassadorial nomination. But put that aside, what did you mean by spying involving Mike Waltz?
Well, I still have a lot of colleagues, former colleagues from the Central Intelligence Agency. We were operations officers, we were spies, and we still communicate. And when we communicate, we all almost immediately came to the same conclusion that this was probably an espionage operation, that Waltz, if not a recruited or controlled asset of Mossad, was certainly cooperative in terms of helping Israel, which is how we guys, when we used to recruit in the old days, we were actually helping people and that sort of thing. But that's the line you use.
Or when you say it was an espionage operation, what? The positioning of him as the national security advisor, he was actually there as an Israeli asset?
I would rather think they just, once he got appointed by Trump, they were delighted because he probably had pre-existing contacts with a number of official Israelis, and then they just kind of tightened the screws a little bit. And so my suspicion is that this signal phone call, which wound up with Jeffrey Goldberg on the line, is a little suspicious. It smells to me, and it smells to some of my other former colleagues, as if this was an intelligence operation. And you have to say a successful intelligence operation from the point of view of the Israelis, which is why Waltz is now sitting somewhere else, as you point out, nowhere else at the moment.
Right, nowhere else. Does Mossad have, trying to think of the right words, the ability to control or profoundly influence Waltz's successor, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio?
Well, that would be sheer speculation on my part. But again, there are a number of congressmen, ex-congressmen, whose relationships with Israel should be quite suspect. And if these guys were ever vetted, which means, put to a serious security investigation, those relationships would have to be looked into. But of course, being congressmen, being established, that ain't going to happen. And the fact is, I wonder more about Cruz, Cotton, and Lindsey Graham. I mean, Lindsey Graham is in their pocket. So there are a lot of these people floating around.
Has Trump done anything to change the behavior of the Netanyahu regime? Anything?
Well, it depends to what extent you give credibility to all the stories that have been floating about the bad relationship with Trump and Netanyahu. There is considerable speculation that this is basically a cover story, again, where we're talking about espionage, we're talking about deception operations, this kind of thing, to pretend that a relationship or a situation is other than it really is. I rather suspect this is being done on the part of Trump to basically counter growing animosity on the part of the American public, up to about 70% now, for Israel and its behavior. So he's covering his behind, is what he's doing. And Netanyahu, for his part, is playing the same game. He's saying, as recently as today again, there's nothing wrong with the relationship. The United States is completely covering or supporting what we do. And Donald Trump and I have been speaking on the phone. This is another thing that's been denied in these stories, that Trump has refused to even talk to Netanyahu on the phone. But here, Netanyahu, as I say, just recently has said, oh, yes, we had this chat about this and we agreed about everything.
I'm curious as to whether you think this is just a canard of sorts. I mean, there are a number of historical events, recent ones, that happened that are undeniable. Trump did make a trip to the Middle East and ostentatiously did not go to Israel. Trump did dispatch, not Witkoff, but another gentleman to negotiate directly with Hamas, which infuriated Netanyahu. This is for the release of the young man from New Jersey who joined the IDF, Eden Alexander. Trump stopped the bombing of the Houthi civilian folks in Yemen. These things appear to have snubbed Netanyahu. I don't know. Is it a real snub? Do we care? Does anybody like Netanyahu, or is this some sort of a front that the Israelis and the Americans are putting on?
It could be a front that they're putting on, or again, it could be explicable in terms of U.S. politics, that Trump felt he needed to make some gestures to show that he was not really under the control of Netanyahu and the Israeli government and the Israeli lobby in the United States. Now, it might be debated whether he is or he isn't, depending on what your view is. But the fact is that he's a little bit, I think, looking over his shoulder. And I think this other business, if there indeed was espionage penetrating to the office of the National Security Director, that basically is a sort of an ego blow against Donald Trump that he might be inclined to respond to, given his incredible hubris. So I think there are a number of factors coming together. Trump is not always coherent. In fact, quite the contrary, in terms of explaining why he does things or what he's doing. And that was even visible at West Point on Memorial Day. Right. There is a lack of cogency to the thought process of Donald Trump. So I wouldn't go too far on what he's saying,
right?
And look at what he's doing. And he's not stopping. He could stop Israel from what it's doing, the genocide, and whatever activities in terms of Iran, with a phone call by saying, look, your supply of weapons is cut off as of today.
So Witkoff is in Rome negotiating with Iran.
Right.
I don't know how they're going to negotiate, because Witkoff originally was quite reasonable.
Right.
Witkoff was reasonable. His instructions from Trump were reasonable on the enrichment. The number was very low enough so that it couldn't be used for nuclear weapons, high enough so that it could be used for peaceful means, which they do now as we speak. And then suddenly the president must have directed Witkoff to take a hard Zionist right turn. And he says the number is 0. Well, that's a non-starter. Nevertheless, they are in Rome. They are negotiating. While that is happening, the Netanyahu regime is threatening to bomb and attack the Iranian nuclear facilities. How do you deal with a so-called ally trying to wreck your negotiations?
Well, the obvious thing is, I agree with you completely that they've basically walked away from the basis for a deal with Iran, where they had kind of, all right, low level enrichment, fine, uh, higher level that they could be weaponized relatively easily. No. And Iran seemed to be going along with that. So somebody sent the message to either Donald Trump or to someone in his administration that this was no longer acceptable. The Israeli position is that zero is the only acceptable number. And if Iran doesn't go along with that, Israel and Trump, I think Netanyahu said yesterday, Israel would look at its other options in terms of dealing with Iran. So if Trump were serious about not wanting to go with Iran, and I think at the back of his head he probably is, he would be putting pressure on Netanyahu in a serious way to prevent this war from happening, because this war will be a catastrophe for everyone, including Israel and the United States. So it would seem that it's not in anyone's interest to have this happen, but yet there it is kind of developing right in front of our face. And Donald Trump, if he really believed these things and wanted to do these things, will be taking steps to stop it.
Is there does Netanyahu have any serious worries from the leaders of Great Britain, France, Germany, and Canada?
It's funny. Today I was looking at some of the European media to see how their press and everything was responding to this. In Britain and France, they seem to be taking, and Italy, they seem to be taking these warnings a little more seriously, thinking that this will end discussions towards an Israel-European Union trade agreement, which would be very important to Israel in terms of making money. And so they're kind of leaning that way. But then there are others in some publications that are saying, no, this is all just the usual making noise with no intention of actually doing anything. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But it's kind of funny. There is actually a real horse in the race with this European possible trade agreement with Israel, which could be ended. Discussion could be ended if they take enough umbrage at what Israel is doing.
Do you see any circumstances under which Trump would dial back the military aid to Netanyahu? Colonel McGregor sees none. He believes that Trump is totally controlled by and afraid of the donor class in the U.S.
I would agree with Colonel McGregor, as I almost always do. But I would add to that he's afraid of Congress. Congress clearly has the votes to really go after him if he were to do something as impudent as to cut off military assistance. They might, in fact, pass some bills and things like that, reinstating military assistance, and then we'd have an interesting constitutional issue, wouldn't we?
Yes, we would.
Yeah.
Yes, we would. Of course, Congress does control the power of the person, with 2/3 of Congress, I mean, more than 2/3 are in the Zionist camp, but with 2/3 of each house, they can do just about anything.
Right.
Just about anything, unless the court were to stop them if they tried to abolish the freedom of speech or something as preposterous as that. Trump himself is trying to abolish freedom of speech, but that's another topic for another time. What's going to stop this slaughter? I mean, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are talking about killing babies just openly, as if somehow there's some legal, moral, political, military, you name it, justification for that.
Well, like Congressman Randy Fine of the great state of Florida has called for the United States nuking Gaza. That's his solution to the problem going on there. So this is a pervasive. The Israel lobby, or if you want to call it the Jewish lobby, since there's obviously a considerable overlap between the two concepts, it basically is extremely powerful and extremely wealthy, and has basically bought our system to the point where it controls a whole hell of a lot of what goes on in this country and what goes on in our foreign policy. So this is a scary thing. What will change it is if the U.S. gets into something at the behest and urging of Israel and its lobby, like a war with Iran, and it turns out really, really badly. Then maybe people are actually going to wake up and begin to think about what is going wrong here and who is behind this and what are they doing to us.
Whew. Thank you, Phil. Thanks for your insight and your courage, and thanks for saying on this show what a lot of other people do, but what you just don't hear in mainstream media, and for doing so with such intellectual honesty. Thank you, my friend. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Well, thank you.
Of course. Coming up tomorrow, Thursday, at 8 in the morning, Professor Gilbert Doctorow. At 2:15 in the afternoon, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. At 3 o'clock tomorrow, Professor John Mearsheimer. At 4 o'clock, we think we found him. I won't tell you where. Max Blumenthal. And at 5 o'clock, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. A full day for you on Thursday. Thank you for watching. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.